Good evening, everyone, and I'm sorry for the delay. It's the holiday of Hanukkah, so things are a little bit behind. Welcome to lesson number 6. We are reaching our final study. Today, actually, the topic is not so comfortable, but part of life. And if we know how to do it right, I say even if you took only one part, one area, it would assist and improve your relationship. So a very quick summary of the past 5 lessons. In lesson number 1, we discovered the idea of empathy. Joseph is the one that shared with us in its last week's portion, despite his challenges and away from home, treated like a slave in jail, when he sees someone waking up not the same as they were the day before, it bothers him to a point that he asks them to what happened and sharing. That's empathy. Lesson 2, we discovered the difference between listening and hearing. Hearing is, I want to learn something new. I want to gain. Listening is, I want to give attention to the speaker. I want to make sure they're important in my life. So I'm patient. So I make sure they know that they are counted. Lesson number 3. We spoke about that the default of the human is negativity bias. We would, if someone did us a favor, we'll remember it for about 5 minutes or 50 minutes. That's it. If someone did not return a call or did something disrespectful, we'll remember it for 5 years to 50 years. Why? That's the way we're created. I have an extra book. So, in order for us to defeat negativity bias, we need to have the idea of positivity bias. Rambam Maimonides tells us that even though I was inborn with certain natures, with action I can bend it, I can change it. So if I contemplate about my spouse, my sibling, my neighbor, people in my circle, about how good they are, how kind they are pleasant, they are patient, they offer themselves to help. What I do is I train myself to think in a positive way, pushing off the negativity bias. So positivity bias is the way to go. That's lesson 3. Lesson 4 was about what happened when we disagree. So we discovered different myths. One of them that the disagreement must be ironed out. Another one is if we disagree, maybe we're not meant for each other. A boss and an employee, if they disagree, 2 partners, a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. And the Torah teaches us just like our features, our faces are not alike, so are our mind. So therefore, if we all agree all the time, somebody cannot express themselves freely. Because free people who are able to express their personality will disagree with one another. That's number 1. Number 2, if we find that there is disagreement, don't have to delve into and solve it. Just move on to other areas where you are able to agree on and put it aside. It will dissolve within time. Last week we spoke about criticizing. What happened to a point where we have to criticize? And we've discovered that there are prerequisites, there are conditions. It has to be done out of love, humility, gentleness, and in the right times. And there was another condition. Do you remember everything we just that we studied? Do you still remember? Because I'll come into play this lesson. Tonight we are coming to speak about what happens when the inevitable, where someone had offended me. Someone had caused me a painful experience. We are not dealing with a very severe, serious behavior. Someone has a chronic issue, substance abuse, always lying, chronic liar, In this case, we have to evaluate whether we should be in a relationship with that person, even between siblings. We are dealing with small issues just like we talked about last week. And it bothers us. And we are hurt. How do we forgive? Why should we forgive? And how do we ask forgiveness? Because I don't know about you, but I know that I offended people and I need to ask forgiveness. In other words, not only to grant forgiveness, but also to offer forgiveness. Here are the issues that we're going to be dealing with. The topics we're going to be talking about are small issues, but they hurt me. A spouse lied. Whatever. We all have examples, do we? Don't we? Or am I the only one? Israelis, they say when Israeli tells you, let me be honest with you, the next word that comes out of their mouth is a lie. So when an Israeli tells you, trust me, you know you're getting into trouble.
Don't use the words trust or honest.
Because Israelis are very good. They hold a Marlboro and they say, trust me, nothing to worry. Then you know, hold on, there is fasten your seatbelt. You're getting.
Yeah.
The same is about let me be honest. When someone tells you, I want to be honest with you, let me be honest with you, you know something is going on. So, did you buy the garbage can bags? Oh, of course I did. And she comes home. I figured I'll do it before she comes home. I'll run back to Publix. But unfortunately, my car couldn't speed fast enough and she made it home early. You lied to the spouse. Parents disrespected. My child speaks disrespectfully. Friend failed to support. I asked someone if they can come over to help me move a refrigerator. And they say, it's too much for me, my back aches. It hurts because they can do, and when they need to move the refrigerator, they know how to count on you. Acquaintance refused favor. I asked a favor from somebody. Can you go shopping anyway? Do you mind picking up a bag of tomatoes and dropping it off? I'm so sorry. Acquaintance made insensitive joke and coworkers disparaged. People are saying publicly, oh, this guy does not finish his projects. I always have to support him. He doesn't do a good job, etc. These are things that put you on a crossroad. Meaning that you can decide, is it going to weaken the relationship or you're going to do something about it to fix it? I'm hurt because I asked them a favor and they did not come through. I'm hurt because they lied to me. It's not chronic. If they keep lying all the time, I'm in trouble. If my child raises his voice, if my child speaks disrespectfully, if my child fails in school where there is no reason other than laziness or being busy with other activities, then I need to decide, should I say, I'm sorry, not interested, move on with life without that person, or you're going to try to fix it. Our topic tonight, our lesson tonight, is centered around trying to fix it. There is another choice. You can tell your boss, I'm not interested in working anymore. You can tell your employee, I'm not interested anymore. I would like to get someone who don't lie to me. But you can also take a chance and say, this is an issue. I'm offended. You told me you're going to be at work at 8 a.m. and what's going on? And give them an opportunity to ask forgiveness and then move on. We're going to learn the idea of forgiveness, how to grant forgiveness and why, and how to ask forgiveness the best possible ways. So I have a question for you. What's harder, to forgive someone or ask forgiveness from someone? Ask forgiveness is harder? Forgiving is harder? Okay, I want to hear the reasons. Why asking forgiveness is so hard? Because it crushes the ego. That's the only reason?
Put yourself out there.
You have to put yourself out there. You expose yourself. Any other reason? So
It's against your nature.
it's against your nature, okay? Just a minute before we get to the other. Somebody said today that part of the reason it's hard is because you don't always are granted forgiveness. In other words, it depends on the other party. When you ask forgiveness, the other person may say no. Did anybody ever experience when people refuse to forgive? I refuse to forgive. I do sometimes, yes. I'm a tough cookie. We'll talk about it, yes. Huh? Now I want to hear Doug's.
Actually, I misunderstood what you said
Okay,
and thought when you said I thought you said ask for forgiveness instead of asking forgiveness. In other words, I thought you were saying, is it easier for me to ask someone to forgive me?
Yeah.
Or, and basically I got it backwards.
Okay.
So
so we all agree that asking for forgiveness is harder than granting forgiveness, okay? Yes, is that clear? Now that you have agreed to that, we are going to discover how to ask forgiveness properly. And if you ask forgiveness properly, there's a very, very good chance of getting to be granted forgiveness. However, sometimes people ask forgiveness, they don't realize that instead of asking forgiveness, they add oil to the flame. Yes.
And is it the same way to ask Hashem for forgiveness or two different ways? Approach.
It's much different.
Much,
Much different, yes. Here is an overview of our lesson. We are going to discover the way forgiveness works, but we will discover the general modern civil therapeutic idea of forgiveness. And then we will discover the Torah, the Kabbalah understanding of forgiveness, which will give us the why. Why should I forgive? Why should I ask for forgiveness? We also are going to learn the how, practical examples and practically speaking, how to ask forgiveness, because it's harder than to grant forgiveness. Granting forgiveness, there is not much to it. Asking for forgiveness has to be done right, so it should be accepted by the offendee. Here is the way, to save time, and at the end of the class, if you stay, there is a short video presentation on the idea of forgiveness, which I think is very powerful, but it shouldn't be part of the class. I cannot do it part of the class. The idea of forgiveness in the secular world among therapists, here is the way they introduced it. And we'll see it in text number 1. We're going to read text number 1, but before we get to read it, they say that your life should be controlled by you. When someone offended me and I don't forgive them, I allow them to continue controlling me because I'm angry, my blood pressure is going up. I'm unhealthy to social, I'm able to socialize. I don't sleep well. All that because I'm angry at the person who hurted me. So granting forgiveness is for my own sanity. It's not for the person who offended me. And sometimes they will advise a person to forgive without even speaking to the guy who offended them, without telling them, without him asking or her asking for forgiveness. Did you understand that? So the best example, and there is a book, again, I can recommend outside the class. I recommended many members where they explain that my brains, or there is a phrase that says that remaining angry at someone for offending us, it's like drinking poison, expecting someone else to die. Because when I'm angry, I'm in rage. For whatever reason, it's for a good reason. He yelled at me, he lied, he, she, they acted inappropriately. But if I hold the anger, what I do is I'm hurting myself. And in essence, I'm allowed that person to control me. So what psychology and therapy say is for your own benefit, forgive people for offending you. Why? So you can control your life and move on. So you can sleep well at night. So your blood pressure is under control. So you're not busy thinking about what he or she did, but rather you enjoy life without. Remember, your brains is like a garden that has a lot of flowers. Positive thoughts waters the flowers with good fresh spring water. Negative thoughts pours poison on those plants. Whenever someone offended me and I think how much I hate him, how wrong he is, I'm going to get back at him, I'm going to demand that he has forgiveness. What you do is you poisoning the plants in your brains. You're poisoning your life. Doctors will tell you it affects blood pressure. Doctor will tell you that you cannot think straight. Doctor will tell you that it causes a lot of health issues because they get overeating and they don't watch their diet, etc., just because they are angry. People are angry. So forgiveness from a secular point of view is for my own sake, for my good life. Is there any question about that? Did I make myself clear? That's secular idea of forgiveness. In other words, forgiveness is about me, and forgiveness sometimes has nothing to do with the person who offended me. I forgive him or her just because I want to enjoy life. And as long as I don't forgive someone who hurt me, I'm still angry. I was in line once, not long ago, with my daughter Hannah, I think, bat mitzvah. So it was 5 years ago in Israel. When we purchased tickets, they told us that you can carry on two carry-ons to the plane. It was an Israeli airline because we had no choice. And on the way back, on the way there, it was good. On the way back, they said, no, you got to pay $100. And it forced because you can carry only one carry-on, and this one has to be checked. I says, but if I check, I should get one. No, you have to pay. And I turned to the lady and I said, I had to make sure the Israeli of me don't come out. But I said, it's not fair. I've been flying so many times. And this is playing lie or cheating. She says, so sorry, that's the policy. Really? Because they deal with it all day long. That's the easy discount airlines. That's where they get you.
And they're stern too.
Oh, they're very stern. They train, right. So I paid an extra $100, and it bothered me because I felt that I was taken advantage of. And Israelis, it's the last thing you want someone to do to you. They can't take it. They will do we know there was an Israeli here who went to court suing a person, and his attorneys told him, you already spend more money than you will ever ask, let alone get. And she said, I don't care.
Principal.
And I know it personally, I know it firsthand. And the guy kept, and the attorney says, you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars. Even if you will recover everything you're asking for, you already spent a lot more. He says, I don't care. I will not let somebody take advantage of me. Well, guess what? He himself is losing it because now not only the other person took advantage of him, now he allowed the person to cause him to lose even more. And he's doing it. He cannot blame anybody. So immediately after we left, I felt that I dropped $100 for no reason. I gave all my blessings and I left. But then I said to my wife was there. I says, now we forget about, because I do not want my experience, the rest of the trip, to be ruined. So I turned the page and totally, completely forgot about it. Now, did she need to ask forgiveness? I don't care. I felt one way, and I may be wrong. It may be that I didn't read the fine print, whatever. But it enraged me just for a short period of time, maybe less than 5 minutes. After I says, I want to enjoy my life. So $100 is gone. It's not going to come back, no matter how bad I feel and how much I'm going to, use harsh language. And therefore, let's forget about it. It happened. And the rest of my journey back home was totally without thinking about it. Because you realize it has nothing to do with the person who offended you. It has to do with you holding on to your life. Is that clear? Here is a psychologist, a doctor, and he's saying, imagine you're driving a plane, you're piloting a plane. Being angry is refusing to land the plane. And all you do is go in circles over and over. Who's getting tired? Who is losing fuel? Who is driving all the planes around crazy that they don't know how to go down because there is a plane that goes in circles? You do it to yourself. Forgiveness is landing your plane and moving on. And therefore, forgiveness is a basic necessity for life. Ivan, can you read text number 1?
Picture the crowded screen in front of a carried air traffic controller. Picture the chaos in the room and the jumble of planes on the screen. Now imagine that your unresolved grievances are the planes on that screen and have been circled for days and weeks on end. Most of the other planes have landed, but your unresolved grievance continues to take up precious airspace, draining resources that may be needed in an emergency. Having them on the screen forces you to work harder and increase the chances for accidents. The grievance planes become a source of stress, and burnout is often the result. Forgiveness is peace that you learn to feel when you allow these circling planes to land. Forgiveness is for you and not for the offender. Forgiveness is taking back your power. Forgiveness is taking responsibility for how you feel. Forgiveness is about you feeling and not about the people who hurt you. Forgiveness is a trainable skill, just like learning to throw a baseball. Forgiveness helps you get control over your feelings. Forgiveness can improve your mental and physical health.
Did everybody understand the idea? Is that
When it
clear?
says a trainable skill,
It's a trainable skill. You learn how to do it. It's hard at the beginning, but it gets easier. Um, There is nothing wrong with this process, but there are some problems with this. Because sometimes people would say, forgive and forget. In other words, I don't want to know from you, I'll forgive you and let's move on. I don't want to have any relationship. You hire someone, or you have a community, you're part of a community, and someone offended you and you forgive, but you don't want any more relationship with them. The other problem is the animal soul is all about what's in it for me. The animal soul wants the relationship only when it gains something, only when it gets filing taxes to get jointly, you save, she's cooking, I'm going to earn a living, everybody brings in, it makes life easier. What happens if the relationship happened that there is a stumbling block, one is acting or speaking not disrespectfully, on one hand you say, let's forgive and move on, because it benefits me, it's healthy, it keeps my sanity. The problem is the animal soul sometimes revert to its default setting. We call it factory setting. Did you ever had a computer that is running in trouble and the customer service would say to you, push this button to reset to factory setting? The animal soul is all about what's in it for me. Sometimes I would say, why bother? Why do I need a relationship? If it's my sibling and they always are asking and they offended me, I'm not interested anymore. Move on. I don't want a spouse telling me how to get dressed, what time to go to bed, how to speak. I don't speak nicely. I don't remember anniversary. Who needs all that? I can live myself and I'll be happier. That's the danger in this attitude. There's nothing wrong except you're taking a chance of creating a major separation that will never be mended. Did you understand that? Here is a story. Did you understand that? Here is a story.
Human being. Maimonides argued that it was impossible to completely change an animal's nature. The wise men spent many months training a cat to serve as a butler. They dressed the cat up in a little suit and trained it to walk on its hind legs. They taught the cat to greet people, escort them to their seats, and serve them food and drink. They then invited Maimonides to a banquet where they intended to demonstrate their accomplishment and to prove to him that an animal can be trained to behave like a human being. The cat graciously greeted Maimonides and guided him to his table. Once seated, Maimonides removed a small box from his pocket. From the box, he took a mouse and dropped it on the floor. Trays and dishes smashed to the ground as the cat abandoned his role as butler and scampered speedily after the mouse. And the debate was effectively concluded.
Now, why did I share with you this story? Anybody?
Because it was the innate nature of the cat to do that.
If I forgive for my own healthy sanity because it's good for me, this is the animal soul attitude, and at times the animal will say, why bother? Why do I need the relationship? I'm not interested because she or he are going to demand and they are going to offend me again, and finding every reason in the book not to continue the relationship. And therefore there is a better way of forgiving, and which is taking the godly soul attitude, and that's the Torah way. So far, so good. Can we move to number 2? So the animal soul will forgive for personal benefit. They don't want relationship. We studied lesson 1. The only reason they want relationship is what's in it for me. I'm going to have tax benefits. Someone is going to cook for me. Someone is going to bring money into the account so we can purchase and go on trips and vacations, etc. When someone he's offended me, on one hand, I'll say I'll forgive him because I want to enjoy life. But it also can lead to saying, why do I have to stay with a relationship? I don't see any benefit. I think I can enjoy life much better if I'm single. And therefore, or if I'm not with a relationship, it's a sibling, it's a parent, it's a child, it's a community. It applies in all cases. But you have a godly soul. The godly soul attitude is much different. And very briefly, here it is. In Judaism, we are told that all souls are anchored in God and thus are inherently unified. We all are created by God to reflect God's image. God put a piece of himself, which is called godly soul, in every human being. And therefore, we are all one. If my hand, while holding the knife or a hammer, hit the other hand, are you going to punish that hand? Are you going to hurt or cut the other hand in retaliation? The answer is no, because it's the same body. The hurt of one hand will always be felt by the entire body. When two people have a relationship because they live in a community, because they're born into a family, because they chose to live in a certain place, it is because God wants us to have relationship with one another. So when I am separating myself because I offended someone, the godly soul is screaming and crying, I want to go back, I want to be together. And therefore, forgiveness is not for my benefit only, but it's for that person's benefit equally, because two souls always want to unite. That's the idea of the forgiveness. Any questions to that? So there is a story, I'm showing with you the topics without reading the text. There is a story about Aaron. Aaron, the brother of Moses, when he died, everybody mourned. Everybody was sad because he used to create peace between husband and wife, between partners, between people. How did he make peace? He will go to one person and said, I heard that you and the other person are fighting each other. I want you to know he's very regretful. He wish he can mend the relationship. He wish he can ask forgiveness. He really didn't mean to say what he said. Did it actually happen? That person said it? The answer is no. But he would do it. Some call it a white lie for the sake of peace. Then he would go to that person would say, oh, if that's the case, he's asking forgiveness. He regrets that he spoke that way. I forgive him. I don't mind. Then he would go to the other person and say the same thing. And the other person would say the same. If he's apologizing, I'll accept his apology and I'm willing to get together. What happens is they would then meet, fall on each other, and fall in love again. Some say that he used to have white lies. He fabricated to bring them together. Kabbalah tells us it's not true. He told the truth because he spoke about their godly soul. And their godly soul wants to forgive. And their godly soul regret what he said. And their godly soul wish they can reunite it. So I need you to know, if you find yourself with a relationship with somebody, a sibling, a family member, any of the 4 circles, it doesn't matter. It is because God wants you to have a relationship with those people. Whenever something happens that he or she offended you, or vice versa, we know that the godly soul is crying. Because the godly soul says, why am I separated from my other partner? It's just like hitting my right hand for chopping inadvertently the left arm. Is that clear so far? Any questions to that? So again, The animal soul will forgive for personal benefit, which is great. Don't allow someone to control your life. Don't allow someone to poison you. Don't allow someone to take away your energy and your health. But it can cause someone at that time to reevaluate the relationship and say, I'm not interested anymore, and pull away completely. Godly soul is forgive to return to the inherent unity. If I find you in the room, it's because I need to have a relationship with you. That's the way God wants. My godly soul and you godly soul enjoy this experience right now. And if we have a conflict or I offended you and you went away from this, there is a godly soul who is crying. The godly soul strive to return back to the relationship. Did I make myself clear? Can we move on? Any questions to that? I'm taking giant steps here. I want to talk a little bit about the process. How do we ask forgiveness? In order for forgiveness to be accepted properly, and I need you to pay attention because I'm going to test you, there is going to be 4 steps. Number 1, someone has to stop the fire. Number 2, someone has to Number 1, someone has to take the responsibility and stop the fire. Number 2, the person, the side that got offended has to express themselves. Number 3, when someone realized or told that he offended, should not try to excuse themselves and justify. And number 4, ask for forgiveness. Here are the 4 steps. We're going to go through each one of them. Whenever you have an argument, because the argument is the source of all conflicts, someone has to be mature enough to say, I do not want to respond. Stop the conversation. I'm right. I can prove you are lying, or you made up, or you told me the same thing over and over. That's not what is needed. Someone has to be big enough to say, let's not answer. You need to cut this circle of fire, the negative, and therefore to remain silent. Simple? Doesn't make sense? The Talmud in text number 5 tells us that the universe exists only for people who do not speak. Here's this text number 5. Ina, is it your turn?
Remaining silent. The world endures only because of those who choose to remain silent during a quarrel.
Not because people forgive, not because people don't argue, not because people don't hurt one another, because all that happened all day long. The universe exists is because someone is willing to keep quiet, to take control, to be the mature one, and do not answer. Take your time, and then later on you can continue the conversation. There was a person who came to his doctor, to his therapist, and he says, Doctor, me and my wife argue all day long, and it ends up in screaming matches. And each one is screaming, and I answer back because I have to prove that I'm right, and she's right, and I'm right. It gives me headaches. I can't walk. I don't earn a living the way I should because he's a salesman. He cannot make close deals. And do you have a suggestion? And the doctor says, I actually have a very good remedy for you. Do you want your wife not to yell at you? Do you want your wife not to scream at you and tell you what a liar you are? And he says, sure. The doctor says to him, so next time when you come home, if your wife did not show up yet, as soon as she enters the door and she starts speaking, go to the sink, fill your mouth with water, and start swishing your teeth. Swish, 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 swish. Don't stop until either she goes to another room or when she goes to bed. If you came home first and she's home, as soon as she starts speaking, don't eat, don't drink, go to the sink, fill your mouth with water and swish until she goes to bed or you go to bed or until she leaves the room. So the man went and did it. 2 weeks later, he comes back to see the doctor and says, "Doctor, you remedy is magic. She loves me. She don't think I'm a liar anymore. She's very respectful. She's kind to me. I understand this is a good cure, but can you tell me how does this magic work with the water? It's a magical water." And the doctor says, "Nothing to do with the water, actually. All I wanted you is to keep your mouth shut when she starts yelling at you. Because if one person stop this circle, you can bring peace. So before forgiveness, if I'm hurt, and like I hurt others, I get hurt, the first thing to do is to remain silent. I'm right, I'm hurt, you're wrong, you shouldn't be speaking that way, it's really disrespectful. Keep your mouth shut. Even when it comes to children. If my children disrespect, I sometimes replying will enrage them, and they can end up acting or speaking in a worse. It's a vicious cycle that gets worse and worse. So the first thing, please, that's number one. I'm going to test you on it later. Number one is take control by remaining silent. That's the reason the world exists. That's a Talmud. That's not Kabbalah. Number two, my Manatee is right that if someone offended me, I have to share with that person that I am hurt and why. Because holding grudges, because bearing grudge, he or she hurted me. They called me name, they blame me, they say I never show up on time, whatever it is, and it hurts. If I do not explain why, I'm holding grudges and therefore I commit a sin. It's a Torah sin, do not bear grudges. Therefore, when the Torah, by the way, we studied last week, surely shall you rebuke, surely shall rebuke or reprove you fellow friend. We studied last week. You should not bear a sin. That's the text from last week we spoke. Here is another explanation to that text. If someone hurted you, you must share with them how you feel and why, because otherwise you will carry it in your heart and you are committing a sin. So the sin you're going to carry is not his sin, it's your sin. Now, it needs to be said that if I can move on from the sin and forget about it, that's great. But we have to understand, not every person is the same. It's not the people, the action, the type of offenses, it all varies. So somebody can call me a thief. People called me thief many, many times. There was once in public, somebody called me a thief. You're a thief. And I turned to the person, a thief, got him. So I said to the person, when was the last time we met? And he said, never. So I said, why did, because all you guys are thieves. All you guys are, and everybody burst in laughter. It was in front of 200 people. Another time I was in public and said, because I am the attorney, I'm the lawyer of all religious Jews. So if someone got offended somewhere in New York because the religious Jews cheated them, I am the one to have to answer. I entered the room where the public was invited to greet guests who came to town. I'm not going to get to detail. And someone got up and started yelling and says that, I don't belong here. I'm ashamed for Judaism. And he started listing all kinds of offenses that had nothing to do with me. So I stood there and I was laughing. When he was done, I turned to him and says, I'm not going to take the few minutes. Each one got like 2 minutes to speak. Says, I'm not going to allow you to take the 2 minutes I have to speak to the guests and instead addressing you. So I move on. Afterwards, a lot of community members came to me. There was a large room. They were very impressed. And they commented how calm, cool, and collected I was. I said, I do not allow people to steal my time. I had 2 quality minutes with the guests that came to town. They came from Israel as guests of this community. I want to speak to them. I don't want this guy to take away my 2 minutes, whatever he says about me. So when people, I can let go, and I do, I train myself to let go. I don't care about that. But for some people, it hurts. And they need to let you know. You need to let the other person know, I am hurt, and explain why. Did I make myself clear? I just want to show it to you. There was 2 Hasidic fellows who went to meet a businessman in Manhattan. For the first time, they went up to the 90th floor of the building. And one Hasid looked down to see from the window the street. And the other rabbi turned to him and says, what do you see there? He says, I look down, I see the people and the cars are so small, like toy cars, and people are like ants. And the rabbi says, yeah, from up there, everything looks very small. In other words, if you elevate yourself spiritually, these issues become minute. They minimize. You don't care. However, A, don't judge anybody. B, it all depends on the act, what kind of offense. It all depends on the person. Some people do take offense to a certain particular behavior. Some people are on time all the time. Some people couldn't, because as they say, the clock for them is only a suggestion. It's not something they follow. So you said 9 o'clock, 10:30 is the same. It's it's one digit down. It's no big deal. Some people, it's 9:02. You show up 9:02 and they get offended. Some people, it depends who. Is it a spouse? Is it a stranger? It all depends. So for some people, they can move on and forget. And that's great. That's one attitude. But if it's not the case, then that's number 2. After someone offended me, I say to that person, of course, we spoke about last week, it has to be out of love, with gentleness, with humility, and with the choice of words that are gentle, and say, look, I'm offended, and explain what made me get offended. Is that clear? Let's talk about point number 3. So this is speak up. If you can forgive the person, that's great. But if you are hurt, it's a sin to bear grudge. It's a sin to hold it in my heart or brains. I have to turn to the person that offended me and say, the way you spoke or what you did hurts me, and I was offended. This is the reason. Not holding it back and moving on. It's not healthy. It's a sin. And it doesn't help for the relationship. You don't give them an opportunity to ask for forgiveness. Here is number 3. The third one is when you ask forgiveness, don't minimize the offense. Someone says, you told me 9 o'clock and you weren't there 9 o'clock. The way to ask forgiveness is to say, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how hurtful it is, and I accept responsibility. Please forgive me. That's a forgiveness. But can anybody give me an example where you try to find excuses and minimize forgiveness? Anybody? Nobody can think of anything. Okay. We're going to share with you some examples. So if someone said, I'm offended, they should say that, and they tell you why. They deserve an apology, not an explanation. I believe it's Jefferson who coined the following phrase, which I use hundreds of times. Do not spoil an apology with an excuse. Whenever you say, I'm so sorry I'm late, but it's not me, my wife kept me on the phone, you spoil an apology with an excuse. It's not a good apology. And that's the crux of what we're talking about. If I say, but it's not that such a big deal. What you do is you use an excuse to minimize the apology. And the person does not appreciate, hearing that does not appreciate it. Now, we're going to get ahead about 7 or 8 examples. I hope you can remember 5 out of the 8.
Yesterday, Noah and Mia argued over their parenting stance. As this disagreement escalated, Noah blurted out,
I don't have time for your emotional baggage. You're lucky I put up with you. Why can't you be like Jack's wife, Rachel?
Today, Noah and Mia want to put that silly altercation behind them, but Noah finds apologizing difficult and is using strategies to avoid responsibility. We'll replay the scene several times. Whenever Noah uses an avoidance tactic, we'll buzz him and delete that instinct from his emotional catalog. While this doesn't work in real life, seeing where Noah goes wrong can help us get it right.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Oh, come on, Mia. You're being overly dramatic. It wasn't a big deal. You're making a mountain out of a molehill.
Noah minimized his mistake. Let's delete that and rewind.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Believe me, I didn't want to be harsh, but your tone left me no choice. You pushed me over the edge.
Noah blamed the person he insulted. Delete and try again.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Are you serious? So many men treat their wives terribly. You should be thankful for how well I treat you. You have it good.
Noah highlighted greater flaws elsewhere to downplay his error. Delete.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Mia, you needed to hear it for your own good. The truth sometimes hurts. I only said that because I care.
Noah invoked higher value to justify his error. Delete.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. But I had a rough day at the office, and my back pain didn't help. Understand my situation.
Noah blamed external factors instead of taking responsibility. Delete.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Mia, I didn't mean what I said. It came out wrong.
Perhaps a bit better, but Noah is still denying responsibility. They both know it was a jab, so denying adds insult to injury. Delete. To avoid these common pitfalls in denying responsibility, recall that at your deepest identity, you are a divine soul, part of God, the essence of truth. The next time self-justification springs to mind, let your soul guide you. Ask yourself, is my justification accurate? What would God say? What does my soul say?
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
You're right, Mia. I'm really sorry for what I said. It was untrue and unfair. And I could see how much it hurt you. I want to be better. And I'll work on not letting my frustration get the best of me.
Noah takes full responsibility without making excuses, deflecting, or minimizing Mia's feelings. Well done. Recalling your inner divinity empowers you to acknowledge mistakes, take responsibility. This noble attitude ensures your relationships ring with only positive buzz.
I'm not sure if you ever experienced that, but I know for me it happens many, many times. So let's remember, which are the delete? Which are the excuses?
So a husband should have at least 6 tries.
No, I didn't say that.
That's about poets.
Like contrasting to another.
Contrasting to another person is wrong. denying, blaming her, you made me do it because of your voice, huh? Downplaying it. What's the big deal? It's no big deal. What else?
External factors.
External factors, my back. And minimizing. Somebody said minimizing? Minimizing it. So again, you need to understand, to ask forgiveness, or someone of you offended somebody, you must ask forgiveness without excuses, without justification. Minimizing it, blame it on external factors, trying to justify because I care about you and I'm trying to help you. Someone else doesn't have it as good as you do, is all unacceptable. An apology is simply, I am sorry for what I've done.
Another way of saying I'm sorry for you, so that was not my intent. You know, is there are some. No.
It was not my intent. For the sake of sanity, I'm going to stop recording and respond. So, number one, if there is a quarrel, if there is a fight, an argument, somebody has to be the big one, not the right one, not the one who get offended or offended. It doesn't matter. Somebody has to choose to become silent, be quiet. Number two, let the other party know that you were hurt and tell them why. Holding it, if you cannot let it go, if you can let it go, that's great. If you cannot let it go, you are committing a sin. Do not bear grudges. You have to let them know how you feel so they have a chance to ask forgiveness. Number three, when someone asks forgiveness, they cannot minimize or justify their act. Any of the excuses we mentioned, minimize, blaming her, blaming external reasons, contrasting it with somebody else, they have it worse, you have it much better, it's you made the way you spoke to me, it's my day of war at office that made it. All those are lame excuses that damage the apology. As I say all the time, do not spoil an apology with an excuse. If someone got hurt, they deserve a full apology. And number four, ask for an apology. Ask for forgiveness. Apologize. Any questions so far? No questions. Let's talk a little bit about the person who got offended to grant forgiveness. According to Torah law, we're going to discover it. If I hurted someone, the right thing to do is ask for forgiveness. That person should be kind enough to forgive. What if he refuses to forgive? I need to wait a day, find someone else, someone, a friend of his, someone whom he respects, and say to that person, can you go to them and ask forgiveness on my behalf, and give them a reason, a new reason to forgive. So let's say as I was screaming at someone, I was letting someone my full wrath, and ask forgiveness and say, I'm sorry, I'm still hurt, I cannot forgive you. I should wait for a day and then send somebody, a friend of his, and say, I'm willing to take what do you call it? Anger management classes to learn not to let go. And if he says, no, I'm still hurt, wait a little bit and find somebody else, not the same person, to ask forgiveness, but give him a good reason, a new reason. Say, I'm going to be reading about that. I'm going to have a support group. I'm going to have my spouse or my family watch me that I don't behave that way. You have to find a good reason, a new reason, and you have to find another person to ask for forgiveness. Here it is in text number 10. Julia, can you read text number 10, page 247?
The victim is not mollified of the first try. The offender should return and attempt a second time using a different approach. If the victim is still not placated, the
Placated.
offender should return and attempt a third time using a third approach. After the third attempt, the offender need not pursue the matter any longer. If an offender desires to be extra strange, additional attempts are permitted.
Okay, so you ask forgiveness once. Hopefully the person is kind enough to forgive you. If not, you wait and then you ask again, but you find a new reason why you're asking. And then you wait another day, and again you find another reason why to ask for forgiveness. I'm going to show with you that there are two types of forgiveness. Very briefly, there is the forgiveness of Abraham, and there is the forgiveness of Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu. Abraham, his wife, is taken away by the king, Avimelech. God appears to him in a dream and says, you took a married wife, you should return her because you're suffering. He couldn't go to the bathroom. So he says to God, I didn't know. He said, she's my sister. And God says, I know, you are honest. You did not take a married wife, but I want you to know, taking her, abducting her without permission against her will is also unacceptable. So ask the husband, he's a godly man, to pray for you so you should get cured. He goes back in the morning to Abraham and says, why didn't you tell me that she's wife? You told me she's your sister. Here she is back, and please forgive me. Abraham prays for the person so they should get cured from their ailment. His family, his entire household could not use the bathroom. It's a very painful experience they had. But Abraham forgave the man, and therefore he prayed to God to remove that punishment. 10 generations later, Moshe, the Jewish people are speaking against Moshe and God. And Moshe is tired already. They do it continuously all the time. They blame him for everything. So God sends snakes. And in the desert, there are venomous snakes. They start biting the people, and people die. Then they realize that this malady is happening because of their speaking against God and Moshe. They run to Moshe and say, please forgive us. We made a mistake, that we spoke disrespectful. Please forgive us. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, not only is forgiven and is praying to God to remove that plague, but he also prays to God to remove from the record the incident so that the bond should remain the same as it was before the sin. Our sages tell us that there is a contrasting difference between the two. Abraham had no business and relationship with Abimelech, with that king. He asked forgiveness, the man asked forgiveness, Abraham granted forgiveness. What happened the next day? The Torah tells us. Abraham went his way, the king went his way. There is no relationship. They knew each other from the incident, but that's no relationship. Moshe not only asked forgiveness, but asked God that after the forgiveness, it should not affect the relationship between God and the Jewish people, as well as Moshe and the Jewish people. In that way, when we forgive somebody, there are times we say, okay, we forgive you, but that offense remains in the air, and the relationship is totally taking a left turn. That's one way, and it's acceptable for people who are unable to totally completely forget about it. But the best way to forgive is not only to forgive because genuinely the offender has asked for forgiveness, but also remove it from the record and move on with the relationship as if there was no offense. Did you understand that? Yes. That's it. So I bought the siddur this morning. Somebody has the same. Before you go to bed, right? You don't want. You are right on target. Every night before we go to bed, we ask forgiveness and we offer forgiveness to anyone who offended us. And part of the reason is we want to move on not from Abraham level type of forgiveness, but Moshe, where the relationship is a clean record. Remove it from the record. One last part. Is there a time where I should not forgive and it's legitimized? Anybody can come up. When should we not forgive? Can anybody think of a time when we should not forgive? The answer is, the exception is, if it would result in harm to him or herself. If someone is lying or stealing and says, please forgive me, and if I forgive him, it may fuel him to repeat the same thing, I should not forgive, because forgiving him is actually doing disservice. If I'm afraid the guy is going to hurt me again, if someone spoke in public and offended me and repeated the same thing over twice, 3 times, then he says, I regret what I do and I ask, please forgive me, but it might cause him to do the same again, I can say, I'm sorry, I cannot forgive you. Are we clear? Stay here for a video that is different.
Lesson 6, the art of forgiveness. 1. Modern discussions on forgiveness often highlighted self-help benefits. In this model, forgiveness can mean utter disassociation from the wrongdoer to gain personal peace of mind. 2. The Torah promotes forgiveness as the tool of reconciliation, rooted in the belief that all souls are interconnected, like the limbs of a single body. Consequently, conflict should be resolved promptly to allow an already existing unity to express itself in daily life. 3. Accordingly, the more we align with our divine souls that naturally pull us toward reconciliation, the more we feel motivated to pursue forgiveness, whether we are the aggrieved or the offender. 4. The initial step in reconciliation involves ceasing hostilities, which often requires silence. Addressing underlying issues should wait until the heat of anger has subsided. 5. Jewish law advises the offender to acknowledge their fault and earnestly seek the victim's forgiveness, even multiple times. It instructs the victim to raise the issue with the offender and to be prepared to forgive following genuine remorse. 6. Forgiveness manifests in various degrees, from simply wishing no harm upon the offender to fully restoring the relationship. One might forgive minimally today, yet progress deeper as time goes on. 7. While offenders are always encouraged to make amends, the Torah advises the aggrieved that unilateral forgiveness is a noble act if it can be granted wholeheartedly. This teaching is especially useful for minor grievances. 8. Mastering forgiveness encompasses many of the competencies discussed in previous lessons.
And I want to thank you for being good students. Before you leave, there are a few announcements. The first is